All right, everybody. Welcome to Distributor Selection and Agreements. I'm Marty Ochs. You won't be able to see me. I'm going to do a voice over these slides. I'll exit those slides at the end and look for any comments you may have, and then you'll get to see my beautiful face. And then you may click out of this as soon as possible. So if you're wanting to take away that warm, fuzzy feeling of being a part of the craft community, this may end that for you. But all seriousness, this is important. And if you don't get excited about this challenge, you might just be a home brewer. This is a business, it's not a hobby. And this is incredibly important for you to understand of how you choose your partner to go to market and what those agreements look like. So this is a very broad view. This is not unique to you, obviously. Just get the basics and then think about the variables of your company, your market, your assets, your resources that would need or have you change how you select distribution and go about getting your agreements. So the first thing you need to know is understanding these four things to form your partnership. Now, I'm going about this as if you're getting a third-party wholesaler. There are states and places where you can have self-distribution. I would tell you that if you have the ability to get self-distribution, treat that like another company. One, it will help you avoid risk. It should be under its own separate entity. And two, it still goes through this same format. They have to do the same thing a wholesale partner does. There's just different pros and cons to it. So in your mind, if you're like, well, I'm going to have self-distribution in one area, still do this. Think of it this way. So you have to know what's going on in the industry landscape everywhere. Again, no matter if you have self-distribution or not, there is a massive amount of consolidation with the increase of SKUs. Therefore, there are less means to go to market and get that share of mind to get to retail. So you are in a very, very crowded space right now. There is a number of smaller, tiny craft-focused distributors popping up, but they're not going to be able to do the same things that the larger guys will, especially if you're looking to get into chains. So think about who's available to work with and what those markets look like. Go to the market, do your work. Even if it's in your backyard, you should be doing price surveys. You should know the number of retail accounts. You should know what your top retail accounts will look like, what that type of total points of distribution you can have, and an expected rate of sale that you'll get from those retail accounts. Then you want to meet with the distributors. If there's two or more, you should talk to them both, and you should be transparent about what you're doing and find out what are their goals. Ask them, what does your portfolio look like? What are you trying to do in this market? And how does your brand help them get them to where they want to be? Then you want to obviously state your goals. Are you a high growth brewery? Are you a slow and steady? Are you a niche brand? What is it that you're trying to fulfill within their portfolio? You should have a value proposition. You should be able to tell them, this is what I think I do for you. This is why you want me in your portfolio. And then there's all kinds of variables that are happening. Seattle is very different from San Francisco. San Francisco is very different from Austin. Austin is very different from Nashville. So, there's not a one size fits all. If you're opening up multiple markets in a region, it is not the same, no matter how close they are. You need to know what's going on in those markets. Is what's happening with the on-premise, what's happening with the channels and the off-premise. In the Pacific Northwest right now, draft came back very strong, but there's been a problem of accounts staying open for their normal hours because they can't find staff. So that's affecting sales. On the off-premise, it's everywhere has gone way down compared to coronavirus days and being shut down, where everybody just bought tons of 6-packs and 12-packs. So you got to know how those things are affecting your ability to go to market. Most of all, do this. Get to know your economic model. What's your cost of goods? Make sure that your FOB is set to, a healthy margin. And I'd say a very healthy margin is package 30 to 40% or more, draft 50 or 60% or more, meaning you take your cost of goods, add that margin to it, and that's what your FOB should be. If you're way below that, it doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. It just means you have a different model and maybe you're making up that margin in volume or some other means, but you need to look at that. It lands at the distributor. You know that your distributors are going to be 18 to 28% in package margins and 28 to 30% in draft when they add those margins to a price to retail. So then you know your retailers are all over the place. Package, Costco's at 8% margin, but your little bodega in the store, 40% or more. Draft, obviously, it's a massive whopping 250% margin per glass that's served, minimum. So, draft isn't as, you don't have to worry about that. You're not going to, affect the consumer as much, but you need to know the variances of your off-premise. So make sure your economic model is there and talk to your distributor about what margins they expect. So, knowing what that landscape is like, I'd say 25 to 20 years ago, everybody was truly a brand builder. They may say it now, but they're not. They're brand collectors. They had balanced portfolios, X amount of everything that fit perfectly into a portfolio to go to market. It controlled most of all retail, meaning they would go in and they'd sell your products to on and off premise. And they were very gross profit focused because everything was pretty similar in terms of the landed cost for everything craft, landed cost, everything domestic. Now, everything's clogged. There's tens of thousands of SKUs in their house. They own the keys to retail, but they don't control them. They expect you to go in and help a great deal. Chains, depending on the region, chain buyers will either demand to talk to the brewery or they go through the distributor. It's a mixed bag right now. You have to know your region and what you need to do with your distributor to get to chains and have key account management. There's so many consolidated houses, like I said. And then right now, I think distributors are looking for an incremental dollar. Where can they fill their trucks to go to the same outlet? And they're focused on gaining as much margin as possible. So you're sitting there going, okay, where am I going to open up next? Let's say you have your home market, but you're thinking the next market over. What does that plan look like? I can tell you when I opened up California, when I was with Ninkasi, it took me 3 years. I went through, met all the distributors. I did all the research. I slowly integrated beer into events, start building a following, and then we launched. So that was a 3-year process. So starting that relationship, getting to know people, understanding the market, going through the contract, and then having a very, very specific launch plan. So let's enter into the agreement. And I'm going through this very quickly in the hopes that you might have some comments, and then I'll go further into some of these details. All of what I'm about to go over really hinges on a couple of things. The size of your brewery, where you're currently at, what leverage you have. And then the second thing is you have an industry lawyer. You are not using your buddy who happens to also be in real estate. No, don't even pick up the phone or an email, text, nothing. You are only using an industry lawyer. That we're too far along in our industry now not to use specific lawyers for this industry. So no matter what I say here, these are some guidelines. I am not a lawyer. And don't take this as advice in terms of what to put into your contract per se, but the direction you want to go in your discussion to an agreement. That's what you're getting out of this. So know that everything's up for negotiation. Do not use their contract. You can look at their contract as a template. You should only use your contract. And that to me is a line I don't cross. I do not accept any distributor's contracts whatsoever. I'll look at it. But if they don't want to use my contract, then you're either not in any position to be going into new territory and you're not who you think you are, or you're being had. So get a lawyer, go through a template that you want to use. there's basic language throughout all of them, even though it might be very similar to your distributors. There's some basic language that is specific to a supplier you should have. Know that every state has its own laws, and then there's a set of federal laws that guide all of us in the 3-tier system. I'll get into this in a little bit, but every state has some sort of evergreen law, meaning franchise belongs to the distributor and they own that brand right. So having no contract doesn't mean that you're free or a free agent to go do whatever you want to do. In Oregon, and I'll get to this, is Oregon, once you sell beer, you're in a contract. You don't need anything written. You're under a franchise law. And there are many states like that. Some of the controllable things in an agreement you want to look at is control price functions, meaning where there's a price increase, where the market has gone up and the distributor wants to increase price. If your state allows it, you can control what the margin split is, meaning, hey, you can go up in price, do whatever you want, but you're not taking all the margin. So let's say you have a $40 case and they're going to go up $4. And the distributor says, hey, let's split that 50-50. You get $2, I get $2, we're even. Nope. That margin is 70-30. They're taking 70% of that margin. You're only getting 30%. So what you want to do is say, no, we can keep it at the margin you were at and take the money that's different. So they might get $1 out of it and you get $3, but you got to keep it within margin. And there's some legal language you're going to have to check with your state as to how you can do that to control those functions, because you cannot obviously control their price, or the retailer's price. Another big piece to look at is what investment is the distributor or wholesaler willing to make to build your brand? Meaning there are cases where they'll sign a brand and give them some sort of signing bonus. And the brewery can use that as investment to help grow the brand. You can also look at it as every distributor should offer what's called a cents per case, or CPC. And it's, 50 cents per case is an average. A lot of distributors with smaller brands will do far less, 25 cents, 10 cents, 15 cents a case. And it's based on volume. I think you should get something up front when you launch that has nothing to do with volume. You just say, look, I want X amount of dollars. And then you come to a budget that shows you're going to spend that, or they're going to spend that, or you both spend that together in the market to build the brand. You're not taking it to go get a new car, a new truck, or whatever it is. You're going to spend that on the market and to make your and their investment get a return quicker. So you can look at a number of creative ways to get to that. So once you go through the contract, you have to give them a plan. And this isn't in chronological order. You might talk about this plan before the contract's finished, but you have to go through these basics. Start at the base of your agreement and a plan with them to take your brand to market with knowing what your core principles are. They have to understand who and what your brewery is. And this should have been part of your first discussion when you met this distributor, is they've got to understand, why do you exist? What's your core purpose? And they should be able to ask anybody in your tap room, your brewer, your sales director, or yourself, and it's the same answer. Craft breweries are much more of a small little cult or a music band than they are a consumer product good. They're built on why they exist, that story, that mythos. You need to know that, they need to understand it so they can tell that story for you out into the market. They need to know your vision. Where is this going and when are you getting there? How can we help each other get to that point? So make sure that is the start of all your discussions. Then talk about the value proposition again. What do you believe is in it for them? What do you bring to the table that makes them go, wow, this is great. We really need your brand. This is going to help us. And then get to understanding, what are you tracking? What's your KPIs? What's important? Is it right now? I can tell you it's rate of sale. All the chains, all the accounts, and the distributor is looking at how fast can you move stuff, in the market. It's no longer just about points of distribution. So it used to be great. Hey, I'll get 200 points of distribution when I launch. Rate of sales about even. Now I'd rather have 50 points of distribution with the highest rate of sale than those other 150 extra points of distribution where product's just sitting there and eventually you're going to have to pull it off the shelf. So find out what's important to them, what they're tracking in their market. Look at efficiencies, look at your inventories, days on inventory, ensure that you're not getting out of stock. And then look at what is called a release schedule or the menu. What products are you offering them? Are they in tiers? Do you have a core set of beers and then a core set it's there year round, and then some seasonal rotational type of products, and then a lower level that's maybe limited, exclusive, allocated, whatever it is. What does that look like to the total number of SKUs that will be available to them in that market? And know that in big markets right now, they're telling suppliers, like, give me 3 and everything else you got, that's on you. And if we sell some, we sell some, but that's not going to be their focus. They're going to focus on 3 to maximum 5 SKUs, and that's it. The only way it would go higher from 3 to 5 is if chains are asking for placements, and then everything else is bonus. But it's getting really tough to have a nice full portfolio that you think meets all the demands of the consumer. Then you get into programming, or basically what's all your marketing? What are you doing to create that velocity, that rate of sale? Show them, the different marketing aspects that you've got, whether it's social media campaigns, you've got POS, you've got different chain programs, you've got stacks, you've got things that will help reach the consumer and create that pull. Once they see that and all these things are aligned, okay, hey, I know who you're about. I know where you want to go. I see what's in it for me. These are important points we want to get to, of the highest points of distribution with the best rate of sale possibility. I got X amount of products. I know that's going to fit into those accounts, and I see how you're going to support that. Now we can talk about the volume we think as a partnership that we can get to in a projection. So we got points of distribution times an expected rate of sale equals that projection. That projection equates to a dollar amount, a budget that you're going to get to help you set your programming again, how much you can pay personnel, how much you can invest in your brewery to build, a bigger brewery and get more product out to them. And they can see what their ROI is. How much revenue are they going to gain from this agreement? So this is an incredibly important step in or around the time you're meeting. And definitely after the contract is done, you want to solidify this plan. And then you're going to come back to that on an annual basis. It should be a living document that you refer to quarterly at a minimum. So you're with your distributor. You got to think about launch. What are they willing to do? And again, you're talking about this in your meetings to get to know them. You want to look at this as a project management. Don't come to an agreement and then go, okay, how are we going to launch? You should have had this discussion maybe on day one along with the other stuff. So look at this project as these 4 things. What's the brand objective? Is it points of distribution in that market, or is it rate of sale? Figure out what you want to do. Do you have a product that's high end that you need to go far and wide but an inch deep, or do you want to just go to 20 of the best accounts and stay very focused and let that 21st account come to you when they see how well you're doing in those 20 accounts? So figure out what are the brand objectives that you need to be successful. Also know in that market, is it a brewery or is it the brands? Meaning, do they need to know the brewery such as Surly, or do they need to know the individual brands? How do you want to market that? And again, that's probably a function of whether or not you're in chains, whether or not you're in a certain channel on and off premise, and how your brands or brewery is perceived. Do they know your name Surly, or do they know just the different brands that you put out? And what are they going to recognize? What's important to them? Also, how many brands are the distributor even going to focus on? Remember, if you're in a big brewery or a big distributor and they're looking at 3, you're probably needing to go more on the brewery side of focusing your market and your message, or marketing and your message. So that goes into your marketing plan and support. What tools, resources, assets does the distributor need to help print that POS to get it out there? Do you have a person on the ground to go to accounts from day one? Or are you building up to, a sale level to then you can support it? You've got to discuss all this before you go in so they have an understanding of what they're going to do with your plan. Obviously, all this goes back to that annual business plan. You wrap up all these things into that plan and solidify that together. So going back to the agreements, now you've had these discussions, you've gone over it, you've talked about the contracts. You want to put these asks in there. You want to make sure there's some point in there that you get to a projection and that you do that on an annual basis and you put a deadline. I'd say, really it should be no later than the end of October. So in my contracts, I always put in there that we had to come up with a projected sales volume and gross profit no later than October 31st. And, we want to get to a realistic distribution goal. I do not want them to blow smoke. So realistic goals come from how much they're going to invest in me. If they tell me in this projection they want to sell 1 million cases, well, in my contract, they're paying me on a projection on their cents per case, not on sold volume. So that's how I got away with saying, look, whatever your projection is, that's your marketing dollar with me. So don't blow smoke. And if they're way too low on the annual projection, then I can argue and go, no way. And in a lot of cases, I was able to write in that their marketing dollars or cents per case was either the highest of a projection or volume. So if they lowballed it and we sold more, I got that much money put into the marketing spend. If they went for 1 million cases, great. You're spending that much money whether we get there or not. Make sure you're looking at action items that you can get into an agreement. So you want some sort of educational process for your reps to engage that distributor's personnel, their reps. Do they get a weekly or a monthly ride with? Are you getting the general sales meetings? Are you, every 90 days? Are you getting a weekly review with your sales manager? Do you, what are the recaps that are needed? You can specify this into an agreement. And that was one of the most important things I put into all my agreements was I specified what kind of communication and what expectations on execution that I could get in this agreement. And if they broke those, there were consequences, there were costs. And it would also show in states that are easier to get out of. If they broke that a number of times and we weren't doing well, I had an easy out. Like, look, you broke this X number of times over this amount of period of time, we're out. And I could point to the agreement, and they broke the agreement. QA/QC, obviously, first in, first out. You want to rotate your kegs, your product. You want to be able to get into your warehouse and see that those cases are being rotated, that the first in isn't being pushed to the very back of the line, and that's going to come out later, and therefore old beer is getting out. Then it sits on the shelf, and then they say, oh, it's out of code, and they're going to, charge that back to you to pick it up. So you got to make sure they have different quality controls and inventory management. And also, do they have draft line cleaners? Do they have tech services on site? What are they willing to do to ensure that your product is being cared for? How much refrigeration do they have? All my product had to be refrigerated, period. There was no such thing as a dry floor or temp controlled, whatever that means. No, it's in the cold box, period. Warm beer is no good. You guys know that. What are the on and off premise promotions and the standard operating procedures with them? Meaning, are they supplying product for promotions? Are they supplying personnel? Do they have assets that they can help out with? smaller craft distributors tend to do a lot of that. Wine Warehouse in California is very good at their reps being a part of these promotions compared to, DBI. And I'm not saying DBI is bad versus Wine Warehouse or vice versa. It's just their abilities to do things are different. What are the key account managers SOPs? Meaning, are they presenting? Are they putting your information together? Are they managing traffic to the chains, or are they assisting you? Are they doing the day-to-day traffic to those managers? You've got to figure out how they work. And if you're in the chain industry, this is very important. It is very different from the Pacific Northwest and that versus Texas, and how you deal with those national and regional chains. So make sure you understand that and what you can put into the agreement, meaning, again, meeting times, share of information, reports. Inventory and order standards. I had an out of stock standard. If I was ever out of stock, I took the number of days that we were out of stock times our rate of sale. The gross profit we would have made off of that, that's their penalty. Not every state's going to allow you to do that, and very few breweries have the leverage to be able to get that into an agreement. But when you're a hot brand and moving up, you get to ask for the moon. And I absolutely made sure that no one was going to be out of stock, especially if you work in the chains. That's a killer. You go out of stock, you may lose that placement for months, if not a year or more. Who's handling shipping costs? You or them? Trust me, if it's them, it's just like buying from anybody else. They pad the cost. If it's you can be really efficient and effective, but it's a lot of time and effort. So make sure that's understood. Sales reports, are you getting information via VIP or some other software, or are they sending you depletion reports? A long time ago, distributors really didn't want to share this information. Now they're just like, please take it. You do your analytics. We don't have time to go through and use this. But you want to put this into an agreement as to how you're sharing information, what you're supposed to get, how you can use that, and so on. And it's always going to be about your brand. You're never going to get insights to their portfolio, and you can't legally, but you want to make sure you're putting that into your agreement. You want to make sure you protect your intellectual property. That's anywhere from all your product to your branding assets, your marketing, your POS. Do not allow a distributor to grab images that you have in a digital library or just off your website for them to put on a poster, a banner, or whatever it might be. That's not appropriate. You control everything if you want your brand to look good, no matter who you're with. A big AB house has awesome, ability to make banners and stuff like that, but they should not be manipulating your brand and how or where it's used. Again, try to see where you set your margin standards and what's legal in your state. Again, you can't control their price, but you can find a way to talk about ensuring margins are set in a way that they can go up in price, but you want to ensure that you're not splitting that price increase 50-50, that they stick around their margins. And again, end with investment. What are they putting into the brand? That minimum cents per case? Is there something else that your brand is worthy of? Many new brands are not worthy of any investment. You just get distribution. So don't expect like, oh, I'm going to open up Boston and El Knife is going to just land me a big check. No, you don't get that. Not everybody's doing that, and not everybody's doing that anymore. It's really just about cents per case on volume or projection. Again, know that there's franchise rights. In every state, there is some sort of evergreen law. They've changed a lot of them. New York's great. You don't get to a certain volume, then you can put in and say, hey, I need to leave. And they won't hold you to that franchise right. There is lower cost for leaving, meaning, gross profit multipliers are not set, and it's up to a market value that the state may set. Know your state laws, and know that if you send beer across state lines, more than likely you are in a contract. And back in the day, distributors used to do this all the time. Hey, we really like your beer. Why don't you send us a pallet? We'll sell. We'll see how it goes, and we'll just do some events. It'll be great. And, you'll see what you want to do, and every once in a while we can do that. They're just trying to own your rights so they don't have to sell against you. So let's say in a year from then, you're like, oh yeah, we do want to go and open up, Colorado or somewhere else, or let's just use Oregon, since I know for a fact that you would be in a contract, whether you sign something or not. You want, yeah, I sent it to the OBF. It's great. And they sold a couple extra cases here and there and some kegs here and there. And a year later, you come back and you decide to go with a different distributor. That original distributor will absolutely sue and get the rights. And that other distributor won't have the rights to sell you. And you are in an agreement. That happens many, many times. So understand that you don't just send beer. Know that typical things are 90 days notice for termination is pretty standard. That waivers are not enforceable. I went out of order there, but waivers are not enforceable, meaning, okay, we'll send you beer, but you got to release us in 6 months. No, not in Oregon. You're in for life unless somebody breaks the law or the agreement. You can terminate for good cause. It's not even defined. You really got to go to the mat on what good cause is, and you're going to have a lot of information to share with the judge to prove that you have good cause. The rest is pretty much the same everywhere. Secession in almost every state is the same, meaning if they sell to another entity, you usually get out. You have a right of refusal. And now let's talk about you've gone through an agreement. You've got your lawyer helping you. You've come to an ability to go to market. Part of your growth plan, when you meet the distributor, you're getting through an agreement, is look at what is long-term growth to you. If you have a sales and marketing director in the middle of this, you're thinking 3 years down the path of what are my points of distribution channel expansion? Where do you want to go with this? When I was talking about vision, I need to know this. Well, this is what you're talking about. This is your end game 3 to 5 years out that they need to know about, that you want to ask them what they're capable of doing to get you there. So how many channels are you trying to get into? Are you increasing rate of sale through different types of programming per those channels? And what's it take to manage that distributor? Are you going to have 1, 2, 3 people in place? Do you have supply chain management? Do you have social media marketing directors? What's it going to take to ensure that the people that are selling your product can go to market with as many tools as possible? And once you also have established distribution, and you think about this in terms of talking to a distributor and getting things into an agreement, what does distribution management look like? It's really just about these 3 things: that you have inventory, that you're not going to go out of stock. What does that daily minimum look like? How are you going to handle when you go long? How are you going to handle things when you're short because the market got hot, you got some chain activity, whatever it may be? How are you going to prevent the issues of going out of stock or going way too long? So that goes to the supply chain. Do you have somebody who works just on supply chain? They do. So what's that language? What are the plans to handle the inventory issues? And how do you make sure that everything's taken care of when there's the best case scenario and the worst case scenario, which are almost the same thing sometimes? And then what's that portfolio growth look like? Again, if you start off and they said, look, just give us 3 things to focus on. Have you grown it to 5 because your chain activity's done well? What is your portfolio going towards? What type of consumer are you trying to go after? Are you broad or are you narrow? But these are the 3 things really that's all that's going to matter at the, after a 3-year agreement has been executed, or 3 years into the agreement and it's been executed, and you're going into your 5th year, your 10th year. Really, you just boil it down to these things. So that's the quick and easy side of it. Did it in 34 minutes, not the full hour. And I'll be able to get out of this. You can see my face, and we can stop the screen share. And we can look and see if there's any comments here, and I'll go back and talk about, what type of relationships you need to have with legal representation, how you get legal representation, and who you want to deal with at the distributor. So first, let me check the comments here. Would you review the margin split philosophy with regard to pricing increases? Super interesting. Well, again, the philosophy is a distributor is going to never give back margin. So let's say you start an agreement, they're like, hey, we work off of a 30% margin. Well, when there's a price increase in the market and they take 50% of that price increase, that means they're getting way more margin. So now they're at a 30, blended 31, maybe a 33 or 34% margin on that one product. You can't continue to do that. They'll eventually be at 40% margin, and they'll price your product out of the market, and you're making less and less of that cut. So my philosophy is keep them at 30 forever, for as long as you're going to be in the market. If you want to give up points for some reason or another, that's on an individual basis. But for the most part, margin is different than markup and price. So you want to ensure that if they're healthy at 30, then they stay at 30. And that price increase difference means that what's 30% of a $4 increase then to the total price per case? That's what you want to get to. That's my philosophy. And they need to know that going in to your agreement, that's what you expect to do. How much termination language do you suggest including the contract? Pre-negotiated multiplier. So first, termination language is probably all set by your state. You can put whatever you want into a contract, but the state's going to override it. So you just need to know that if the state is flexible on termination language, especially like New York, great, put it in there. You can get away with no multiplier in New York if you're below a certain volume. And you can also lessen the days in certain states, meaning you don't have to give 90 days, you can give 30. So where you can get out sooner than later, you want that. Where you can get out without state set multipliers on franchise cost, do that. But you cannot, in a lot of states, pre-negotiate a multiplier. That usually you can put it in there and see if they agree to it, and both parties agree, that's great. The judge may say, okay, you both willingly did this, no one held a gun to your head. Our state, may state this, may state that, but ultimately the judge will say they agree with it or they don't. I tend to think you'll probably hurt yourself with a pre-negotiated multiplier than not, because markets change, and you may be giving away dollars or cents. And really, I also go into an agreement not setting up for a divorce. So don't get into an agreement thinking, oh, how am I going to get out of this? I know that's what lawyers have to do, but you personally should be thinking long-term, how are we going to be the best married couple ever? So I tend to not go with pre-negotiated multipliers. Allow exit from the state without paying. That's a state law. You can't do that. So that tried to happen a couple times in Oregon, and the wholesalers and the state and the or what's called a OLCC or Liquor Commission, they went after those accounts. We're like, no, you can't be let go. You are going to pay. So yeah, all those are very state specific. Get a lawyer. For distribution brewery, how would you recommend negotiating with distributors to purchase your brand rights? Well, again, in most states, you're protected. You own the franchise rights, and from there, it's a market. You can sell for whatever you got a buyer for, and it's volume. Don't go necessarily off of current volume or current gross profit. Go off of what the value is, 3 to 5 years from now. They have the means to blow that up relative to your ability to go to the same number of points of distribution. So I've seen ridiculous multipliers like 18 times Well, that's only because they're super small. That total dollar is still small. So I would just go off of total volume and or total value, not try to put a metric to it if you're small as self-distributor. But I also would never give it up for free. There's got to be something. You can be creative. It can be paid out over years. It can be done through execution rights. It can be done through, um, a lot of those things I said and what I'd put into an agreement. But I would never give away distribution rights. And then you put back, so that's them raising their prices to a retailer based on the market demand. So if we go back to the price ranging or price being raised in the market, a distributor has the right to raise the prices to a retailer whenever they want. You cannot say yes or no. You can just be along for the ride because that's the 3-tier system. That's the law. Generally, what happens is a distributor comes to you, a supplier, and says, hey, the market seems to be going up. Everybody, and this is happening everywhere right now. Market's going up in cost. We're going to raise cases $4 a case across the board of our whole portfolio, craft portfolio, including you. And you can't do anything about it. What they're trying to do as a partner is say, you're allowed to change your FOB. So why don't you make some money out of it? We'll make some money out of it. And what I'm pushing back at is, hey, I don't care what the rest of the market's doing. I can't tell you not to go up in price, but I don't need to go up in price. I hate when distributors saying, well, everybody's doing it. I don't care about everybody. I have a plan. I'm doing it. If I don't go up in FOB, you don't need to go up in PTR. So don't do it. If everybody, and that's happened with me, where I had this discussion with the distributor and we agree, you know what, you're right. Let's stay put. We're fine. Let's see what the blowback is. And we can go up later. So we don't get the heat for everybody being mad, and we'll just join them later. You have an ability to talk about those things. You can't just set their pricing and they can't set yours. You can just say, how are we going to work together to do this? What I try to do is say, hey, if you're taking that and you're saying, okay, we'll split this with you. I'm not allowing you a higher margin. I'm allowing, sure, you go up in price, but I'm setting my FOB to ensure that you're getting your 30% margin, which means when you go up $4, you're getting $1 of it because my FOB went up $3. So that's what I try to get to. So you require in the contract that they may disclose that they are raising price to retailer and contractually split it, correct? You cannot contractually split it. You can contractually in most states you have to get communication when prices have changed. So you can put that in there. You cannot put anything as to how you're going to split it. Again, there's a legal gray area as to how you have language concerning their margins. And in certain states, I was able to get language in that said we were focusing on how to ensure that their margins were healthy at the relative rate of when we entered into the contract. So a lot of gray stuff that, again, if it goes to it and a judge is going to decide that that's manipulating price, then we'd be subject to whatever the judge believes we were doing. But, I was able to get an agreement with my distributors that we were focused on their margins staying healthy and not going off of the price increase. That, nope, great, prices go up, you're going to retain your margin, but I'm not giving you X number of dollars. So, go back. I've got about 5 minutes to 6 minutes to end this up. Go back to how you're going to meet distributors and enter into markets. Generally, I have a sales director, VP sales, market manager, somebody enter into the market to do that research, to get to know distributors, to understand, how you're going to go about entering the market. And I hope you are never in a position where you're like, well, we're going to enter the market next month. If you're doing that, you're already in trouble. There's something wrong. There's a red flag. And that if you were to bring that up to a distributor, they know that you're in trouble. There's something wrong. You either did not plan well, meaning you don't have the business acumen to be entering into distribution into that market appropriately. You're not prepared, or you need sales bad. You need dollars, and they're going to take advantage of that from you. You should be going in and saying, we're interested in opening up Portland next year if we need to. And we want to get to know you. We want to understand the market. We want to see what's going on. And I like that sales director to do those things and get to know that. When it gets, and I like the sales director to talk about the agreement or to offer the template and say, here's our basic template. I want you to review it, mark it up. Tell me what you have issues with, or we'll check with the state to see what we can and can't put in there. No problem. When it gets down to contract negotiations, I hand that over to the owner, the founder. I do not want sales directors to be directly involved with negotiations because it ruins a relationship. So I try to have the owner of the brewery and the owner or the GM of the distributor to have those discussions. So the two sales directors, when they talk, they're like, look, whatever our companies agree to, you and I, we're just going to execute the plan. It doesn't ruin our relationship. There's no sense of you won, I won, oh, you got away with something, you took advantage of me. So that was our MO, and the breweries I work with now, I try to set that up. And a lot of times as a consultant, I will help in that negotiation to take the heat off the relationship of those salespeople, because you really don't want to be the person that has to go out into the market knowing that your distributor already hates you. So don't start on that bad note. Try to set those negotiations up at a higher level that you don't even have to deal with. And then when it comes out, you read the bullet points and you're like, okay, we can or can't do this, blah, blah, blah. Let's just go to market. Let's sell our beer. So I think in summary, it comes down to, really understand what it takes going into the market, what's happening in our industry, what options you have with distribution, have a really solid plan, work it through a great amount of time, not a month away. And then know that you have a industry specific lawyer that knows those state laws, what you can and can't do. You, again, can put whatever you want into a contract. You can be very creative, but know at the end of the day, if you were to get in a divorce situation, a judge is the ultimate ruler of what the state will allow, not what you put into a contract. So, and I think lastly is, again, no contract does not mean you're a free agent. It most likely means you have a contract. So that has probably been one of the most forehead slapping, what were you thinking moments in the last 15 years of our industry. And it's still happening. It's still happening to where people are like, I just sent them the beer and they're going to sell some, but I don't have a contract with them. Yes, you do. You absolutely do in almost every state. So don't do stupid things like that. just do your work. Call the state ABC, go to their website and do your homework, get a lawyer and get some help. And then, be a part of the BA, use Craft Professionals site to be able to post some questions and get help. Don't ever do something blindly, and don't ever do it because you need to. If you need to do it, you're probably behind the eight ball and in trouble anyway. So plan far, far in advance to do that. So I hope there's more comments to come. I hope you post on Facebook all your questions, and feel free to get a hold of me. It's Marty Ochs at E3 Craft Strategies. My email is marty at e3craftstrategies.com. And I'm happy to send you back any information I have. And I hope I get to run into many of you over the next months, weeks, and maybe shorter days with an email. So good luck to you. Do your homework. And hopefully this challenge will be accepted and you'll do a great job. So thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and good luck going into the fourth quarter.